I could never say to a partner, I love you unconditionally. Never. Unconditional love. And my thoughts about that. Um, I think that unconditional love for humans is difficult to navigate. I was going to start off by saying, like, just, I don't know, sometimes I overgeneralize too much, obviously. Um, uh, my overgeneralization is that I don't believe in unconditional love for humans. There's, like, that caveat there. And maybe I'll start with that. I'll say that that's kind of where I've been coming from for a long time, saying, like, unconditional love for humans isn't really a thing that you should do. It's, like, not great for you as a person. That's even dumb. I don't even know how to. It's not great for me. I just think that it's not that it's not healthy. It's that it's not realistic. It's not true. It's not legit. It's not something that you should do. I don't know how to word it. Um, this kind of ties into my thoughts about family in general because I think a lot of people have unconditional love for their family, like for their kids or for their. I think that okay, it trips me up the most when people talk about this their significant others and say they have unconditional love for them. I'm like, no, you don't. Like, you can't say that. Unconditional love means that that's it forever. It doesn't matter what they do. It doesn't matter at all what they do. You'll still love them the same. That is like the biggest promise or whatever that you could make. It's just like it's absurd. Like, I think it's just absurd to say that. To say that, oh yeah, it doesn't matter what you do, I'll still love you. No, it totally matters. It totally matters what that person might have decades with you to do something horrible and to treat you horribly and who knows what, right? Honestly, the same thing with family. I'm like, I need to make a conversation about family sometime because it's very complex for me. Well, maybe not very complex, but I whatever. I have feelings about it that seem to be at odds with a lot of people and their feelings about family. Um, I think the same thing though, like unconditional love. I'm like, no, like if if my kids that I don't have, but I mean if my kids or if my mom or my siblings or whatever were to behave in a certain way for a certain period of time or do certain things, I'd be like, you obviously don't care for me. I can't care for you anymore. I think unconditional love, that notion is the reason why to me it was like, oh, how do I word it, like it's unhealthy or whatever. To me, the notion of unconditional love is just, oh, I had it, I had the phrase and now I lost it. um I don't know, it's just, it seems like a falsity. Like, it just seems way too absurd, like I said, to actually follow through with, to actually execute properly, to just, like, I'm not saying that you can't love people forever, because I'm sure that some people, like, for your whole natural life or whatever, you love them and they love you back and it's great, and that you don't actually lose that love. Um, but it's a weird thing. It's almost like, oh, that was it. It's like believing in unconditional love is like a form of self abuse, something like that. Like, that seems to be really accurate with where I was for a long time. And again, with the caveat that this is unconditional love shown towards humans. But we'll get into that because then that broadens it. Whatever. Why do I think it's self abuse in a way? Because I think that there's people that are with abusive partners, and it takes them sometimes years to get out of that because they're like, oh, but I love them and whatever, and it takes them a long time to recognize that by them staying in that relationship, they're just hurting themselves. They're allowing themselves to be abused. You're allowing your partner to harm you. Same thing with family. Sometimes, like, if your family sucks, like if your grandma or whatever is like garbage to you, you can't just be like, oh, well, she's old, whatever. Like, this is gonna broaden so much, which is why it's in a conversation. But I mean, just like, just because people treat you like garbage, just because they share the same DNA as you, doesn't make it okay, right? Like that. So it's to me absurd that you would be like, oh no, but they're family. I have to love them. No, you don't. You don't have to love anybody. Like, this is getting way too much into the other conversation that I want to have eventually. I should have had it first, but here I am. I don't, again, people have unconditional love, especially for partners a lot. They talk about it with family a lot. I think that there should be conditions to everything like that. I mean, this goes to other things like respect your elders. Like, no, don't respect your elders. Respect people that respect you. And that's kind of where I come from. So, well, not where I come from, like how I was raised, just how I don't know where some of these feelings and thoughts have come from in my life because they weren't nurtured by family. Maybe nurtured and conditioned by my environment. I don't know. Anyway, cultural stuff. Yay. So, yeah, I just think that the notion of unconditional love can lead to forms of self-abuse when you stay allowing somebody to hurt you. Basically, that's how simple that can get. I think that's not good. I don't think it's a good thing for a person. I have these caveats because I was like, oh, you can show unconditional love to animals. Like, animals are, like, innocent little, like, amazing things, and you love them, and they love you back, and then they would never do anything malicious to hurt you, right? Whereas humans, even... I mean, I guess the most common thing as to why you would stop loving someone is if they do things to hurt you, if they take advantage of you, if they are showing you that they do not care about you. Whereas I think with animals, I mean, it's just... Animals are animals. They could do things that would hurt you, like physically hurt you, without trying to. It's whatever. They're so run on stimuli and responding to it, and the nature of their character as animals. There's a lack of, I don't want to say autonomy, but I mean it's almost like, oh, stimuli, they react to that, and then there's stimuli over here, and then they react to that stimuli that's provided to them in their environment, or that you provide to them. With your interactions with them. So there's just this innocence there where I'm like, of course you would love an animal forever. But then that opens up to this whole thing with, I can't use that such a strong phrase that like you should never have unconditional love for a human, because there are obviously humans in this world that kind of react like animals in some ways because of, so first of all, like little humans, little babies and like little children and stuff, like there's this whole thing of like, oh, like innocence and like children are innocent or whatever. There's a certain point where there's like an age of reason, if you want to call it that, or whatever, when there's more choices that children start making and they start to become more adult or adolescent or whatever, and they are capable of things like hurting you because they don't, or they want to see you suffer, basically, right? But before they get to that point, I could somewhat understand, like, if you were to love humans in general, or just love children or whatever, that you could love that child unconditionally because there's an innocence factor there. And with that, then there's, like, the whole thing of, well, I guess I should address, like, the whole thing of comparing, like, really small children to animals or whatever is that innocence factor and just reaction to stimuli, because there's not a lot going on up here yet where they're making autonomous decisions for themselves based on anything other than, like, oh, I feel like this, let me do this thing now. Like, oh, I want to do this thing. Like, it's not even that, like, that part is even missing. I feel like this, let me do this. It's more of just, like they just do it, right? Or they're responding to stimuli that are provided for them in their environment. But with that, then there's also people who are not as cognitively able, right? That maybe there's people that, are in their 70s, or maybe not, well, whatever. There's people that are very, very elderly that have the mind of a child. That's just what happens sometimes. So, I mean, there's people that aren't cognitively able, and I really believe that, yeah, you could love them unconditionally, too. I mean, I don't think these things are unhealthy, to love people unconditionally that are like that, like where they are not capable of malicious action. Put it there. But this also goes into things like trust, right? Like I could never say to a partner, I love you unconditionally. Never. Yeah, just won't. I've had this conversation with partners before, but it's like, I could never say that. Like, how could you ever say that you could love someone unconditionally when that person is capable of hurting you? So, like, you didn't... I don't know, it's just one of those things, too. It's not like energy, where it's like, you can't create or destroy energy, it just exists. Love isn't like that. Like, love grows over time based on interactions and experiences and a lot of things, love grows, and it can be destroyed. It can fall apart. You can, and it doesn't have to be as dramatic as like, oh, I have an abusive partner and they betrayed me and they used me and took advantage of me and hurt me and whatever, right? There's so many things that could happen. But I mean, just like sometimes there's distance that grows for certain reasons, and then you fall out of love with people, and maybe you can still love them on to a certain degree as just a fellow human or as a friend or whatever. But the romantic relationship would deteriorate. But on the same note, like you could totally stop loving someone as a fellow human being, right? That you once maybe loved as a partner. That could happen too because that person could go out of their way to really hurt you and be malicious. I think it's healthier, as we've talked about before, to like make as many decisions as possible when it comes to some things. As like a human, just to be like, the conversation I'm thinking of is separating the art from the artist, because I feel like, oh, we're using critical thinking skills here. To me, that's like high like priority is to be a critical thinker. So it's like, well, the same thing with like loving somebody too. It's like, well, no, I'll love you forever. It's like, why would you say that? Like, why would you say like, oh, I'll love you forever if that's, you can't. One, you can't promise that, and you shouldn't promise that. And being like, oh, I love everybody, like, I don't know, like that's like a nice ideal. Like, maybe it's too crazy for me to wrap my head around, and it's very Christ-like. It's like, love everybody. You can love everyone, and it doesn't mean that, like, I mean, then we got to talk about what is love. We're talking about unconditional love, and we've talked about the unconditional part a lot, but I mean, then how do you define love? And like, no, you can like love everybody, but like as in a Christ-like way, I guess you could aspire to be like, no, I love everybody. I think that person's misguided. I still love them as a fellow human being. I really can't get to that level, I guess, like, at all. But I mean, I wouldn't, like, that's the thing, it's the middle ground that's bad, because, like, not loving anybody and not understanding love or being capable of loving is, like, that's really difficult to wrap my head around. And then also the person that's, like, aspiring to just love everyone and see their faults for just faults, and that they need help, or that they're not capable of change, or whatever. That's not necessarily a bad way to be, I guess, but it seems like both of those things seem so not in what we, or what I, characterize as a human being. Like, either not being capable of love and understanding love and knowing what it is and being able to give it and receive it properly, and then the opposite of just like being Christ-like, which I mean you could argue Christ wasn't human, or like whether I mean I don't mean about the real, like Christ is real or not real. I just mean like it's like a superhuman capability to like never sin, right? Or like that type of thing, and that like I think sin defines some humanity too, making mistakes, right? So I mean, like being godlike is not being human. So the ability to just love everybody to me seems like a very like inhuman thing in that aspect too. So in that middle ground, though, that's where I'm like, yeah, unconditional love shouldn't really be a thing for people that are capable of hurting you, people that are capable of abusing you in one way or another, like neglecting you, or who knows what, right? There's so many different things. Those are just, yeah, I don't really know where else to go with that. This is way shorter than I thought it was going to be for a conversation. It's not really like, yeah, not a rant. I just, like, this thing has come up again where again, the unconditional love thing, and it's not that I can't wrap my head around that concept of unconditional love. I'm just like, why? Why would you say that, or why would you actually feel that? Like, that just blows my mind, because that means you don't love yourself enough, I guess is what that is. To me, that's like my instinct to be like, if you say you can love someone unconditionally, then how could you possibly be loving yourself enough? Because you would be in so much pain and whatever from trying to love this person that is causing you pain, right? Because I don't think you're getting to that, like, God state of, like, no, I love everyone I love equally. And I mean, and there's things too where like you can love someone and just like not let them take advantage of you anymore, and just be like, yeah, like we don't hang out. I love you as a person. Like I don't. But again, that disconnect I don't get either. Like I'm so. Sometimes I compartmentalize things way too well, and I draw lines a lot harsher and quicker and stronger than a lot of people seem to do. So, I mean, that's a factor for me too, and I'm aware of that. But I, yeah, I don't know. I just, like I said, this is a weird, like, this is a weird conversation too, because I'm like, trying to make definitive things here and say, like, I'm gonna, like, usually I can say, like, okay, nostalgia is a useless emotion, whatever, right? Like, I can just make a statement and say it. And this is more just talking about it in general. Well, I've done that before too, but I don't know. With this topic, it seems weird. I feel like I should have something more concrete. But I mean, like I said, the concrete thing for me, I guess, is that I don't believe in unconditional love for humans who are cognitively able enough to be malicious. If I were to give it one sentence, that would be the sentence. So for people that, say they love their partner unconditionally, I think that's garbage. For people that even love their kids unconditionally, I'm like, yo, like your kid could be. I don't know if that's where it crosses into the other thing. It's like your kid could just horribly abuse you and like be malicious towards you and want to cause you pain and suffering for like long term. I don't mean just like lashing out in your teens and just like not really being aware of what you're doing or like whatever. And people do things to hurt each other all the time. I don't mean like once you hurt someone you don't love them anymore. That's not it. It's just the fact like people could like really go out of their way to to really cause harm, right? And then it's like, well, no, but I just still love them. Like that's misguided, or like who knows what, they weren't in their right mind or whatever. People make a lot of excuses for people too, and this goes in a whole other like. There's so many conversations that spring from this that I feel like I should have done this backwards, or maybe this is a good springboard for those other conversations talking about family, and my feelings about family, and then I mean, we talked about friendship already, and that already kind of was getting into family territory. So talking about family, and then also talking about like respecting your elders, and like that'll be a rant. But also like people who are not as cognitively able. Like I've had a lot of thoughts in the past like 2 years, like my view on people and how much autonomy they actually have, or how much control they actually have over their actions. Um, because I feel like people have less control of their actions than I used to think, or less control of their thoughts, which leads to actions. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, I think I gotta end it because, like, again, I don't really. I just, yeah, those are just the thoughts on unconditional love not being. I don't know. Maybe it's better to ask a question: is it real? Like, is it actually? Are you actually capable of that at that level? Like, is anyone really capable of unconditional love at that level, or is it just like a fun thing to say, or like a romantic gesture, or like I genuinely believe some people believe that in that moment that they're saying it or feeling it, they feel like I could love this person forever. It wouldn't matter what they did. But that's because you're trusting that they won't do anything. Like you're like I know them, so I can say that. But that's the whole point that I think is weird is that, but they're a human being, and if they have a certain amount of autonomy and they have a certain amount of cognitive ability, they are capable of doing things. Just because you know that they won't, that's like it's like you have unconditional love based on a guarantee that's not a guarantee. It's like, no, I know them. I know they would never do anything like that. I love them forever, and no matter what they do, they're the best. And so just because you know someone won't do something, like, does that unconditional love, does that count if you like had a guarantee? Because then you're not actually putting any trust into that thing. And not even unconditional love in general, just love in general. It's just like trust for that moment. I believe in that. Like I could love somebody until, yeah, that's the thing. I could love somebody until they do this or do that or until that or whatever, and then that love might change or completely disappear or whatever, right? Like if I think of past relationships, but then again we got to define love, and that whole thing's like, oh, you never really loved them in the first place. Again, off the rails from the start. It brings up a lot of questions, I guess, and that's useful because again, how do we define love? There's different kinds of love. What does that love mean? But just the notion of unconditional love has always really perplexed me because I think it's kind of silly in a way in those circumstances that we already outlined. See you on another time.